Oklahoma Gardening is a production of the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the land grant mission of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University, dedicated to improving the quality of life of the citizens of Oklahoma through research-based information. Southwood Landscape and Garden Center, Tulsa's source for great gardens, southwoodgardencenter.com. And the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, helping to keep Oklahoma green and growing. Today, the best of Oklahoma gardening is all about great plants to consider adding to your landscape. Host Casey Hentges has a bush with pearly white blooms. We visit a local iris breeder for an iris primer. At the OSU Botanic Garden, we look at an assortment of Ninebarks. And to wrap things up, Paul James joins us with Specimen plants.
This time of year is a great time to evaluate your garden. It's a time to take a look and see what you liked about your garden and want to continue next year, and maybe what you didn't like or what didn't work and you want to change for next season. It's also a time to look at other people's gardens to get ideas. Now, a lot of times when we talk about gardens, we talk about adding color, but there are some people who have better restraint than I do when it comes to buying plants, who prefer to only buy white flowering plants to create a tranquil, peaceful garden. If you've thought about establishing a white garden but aren't sure you're ready to commit, perhaps try planting white annuals so you can see whether you like it or not. Here are our top 5 white annuals for your white garden.
Number 1.
If you haven't discovered this gem, you've been missing out. This is Diamond Frost Euphorbia, which was actually an Oklahoma-proven annual, which means that you know it will hold up well in Oklahoma conditions. While it might look like a delicate plant, it's actually a pretty durable, tough plant as it handles drought conditions and our heat in the summertime. You can see it has soft mounding clouds of white flowers and complements any plant that you put it next to. It's a durable plant that does well both in containers and in the flower bed.
Number 2.
This next plant will have you seeing spots. This is Ping Pong White Gomphrena, and you can see the flowers are just slightly smaller than a ping pong ball, but they will not disappoint by the abundance of flowers that this plant produces. Because of the unique flower structure, the flowers will last for quite a long time in your garden, and they make also a nice cut flower.
Number 3.
Lantana is one tough annual that can't be beat by our summer heat. And while lantanas come in an array of color, this trailing white lantana will serve as a solid foundation to establish your white garden. The nice thing about lantana is it can handle a little trimming if you prefer a little bit more of a manicured look as well. It's going to continue to produce these half-inch flowers all season long for you. And while this lantana is white, it will definitely be adding color into your garden by the numerous butterflies that it attracts.
Number 4.
Just because you establish a white garden doesn't mean it has to be all about aesthetics. You can also incorporate variegated herbs and vegetables, such as this variegated basil here. This basil will get to be about a height of 2 feet tall, depending on how much you might harvest off of it. The nice thing about this particular basil is even if you do not harvest from it, you'll never see any flowers or seeds. It will continue to have this lovely variegated foliage all season long.
Number 5.
If you're looking for a little tidier look in your white garden, you might think about adding this Snow Queen Joseph's Coat. It's a low-growing alternanthera that only gets about 4 to 6 inches tall and is nice to trim and is a very compact growing plant. As we know, flowers will eventually fade, but by incorporating variegated foliage, it allows you to keep that white color consistent all season long. These 5 plants will help you to establish a really nice white garden. But regardless of whether you plant them in a white garden or one filled with vibrant colors, make sure to plant them in full sun. here with Hugh Stout at Stout Gardens at Dancing Tree, just north of Oklahoma City. And Hugh, I mean, we couldn't have timed this any better. It's just beautiful here.
Yeah, you got here at just the right time. We're pretty much at peak.
Yeah, so are you guys open to people to come visit?
We're open on the weekends, Friday through Sunday from 9 to 4.
Okay, during the blooming season?
During the bloom season, which is usually through Mother's Day.
Okay.
And maybe, we're so late this year, we might go another week beyond that.
Yeah, I know. It's been kind of a cold spring. Has that done anything to our irises?
Just the very early bloomers were affected and couldn't bloom, but it just slowed everything down. They're so smart. When it's hot, they go to sleep, and when it's cold, they slow down. And so they're very useful that way.
So you primarily have tall bearded irises here.
Mostly, yeah.
Okay. And can you kind of talk to us a little bit about some of the maintenance on what we need to know about our irises?
Well, I always tell people dead people can grow them because they're in the cemeteries. They're very, very simple. They need to be dry.
Okay.
Well-drained soil, raised bed preferably. They don't need a lot of fertilizer. They don't like a lot of nitrogen. We try to keep a low nitrogen number. And then dividing them every few years or so because they overcrowd.
And they actually do kind of start dying in the center of them, right? If you don't
Yes,
divide
they will,
them.
and they'll just, I mean, you can't hardly kill them, but they will get smaller and smaller.
Okay.
So it's good to divide them and spread them around the
And
neighborhood.
when is the best time to divide our irises?
The best time is in the fall or late summer.
Okay.
Around here, the rule of thumb is the state fair, you know, the temperature's breaking and the rains come, and then they have plenty of time to get acclimated before winter hits.
Okay, all right. So you've got a lot of irises here that you're trying to keep up with. You actually hybridize them as well.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing with the colors, the petals, and that sort of thing?
Well, we want, big flowers. We want stalks that'll hold the big flowers. We want lots of buds. The biggest knock on irises is that they only bloom for a short period of time.
Okay.
So we want to extend the bloom season. In some cases we have rebloomers, and we can work with those to bloom twice a year. Perennial qualities, making sure the foliage looks good when the irises aren't there. I mean, when the flowers aren't there.
So do you want to cut back the irises, or?
Well, you can. If they're getting a little unsightly or whatever, it's okay to, we cut them in a fan so they still have their foliage. We don't cut them to the ground. But yeah, I mean, I obviously have too many. We don't do that.
Okay, all right. Well, and so what are some of the things that you're looking at with your irises that you're hybridizing here?
Well, we're looking for form. We want a big, wide, what we call the fall. The parts that fall down are the fall. We want wide falls that show a lot of color. We're getting more and more ruffling in them now, edges on there. We're getting a wide variety of color. The stalks need to be candelabra type, where the flowers have plenty of room to open. And then, see, we have like this flower will be gone in a few days, but we have another one coming up.
Okay.
So the sequence of bloom is very important. So it lasts a few weeks instead of 1 week or whatever. And yeah, Oklahoma is very, very demanding as far as perennial qualities and strength. The stalks need to stand up in the wind. It's pretty windy here, and this is doing just fine.
So you mentioned you're even trying to do some different hybridizing with the beard itself.
Yes, yeah, it's kind of exciting. We call them space age irises, where we're getting these appendages on the beards. And this is what we call a flounce. And, eventually this will turn into like a double iris with the hybridizing. You notice the form's not quite as good on this one as the other. But we can breed to strengthen that.
So you're developing petals where there weren't any petals.
Exactly.
So Hugh, can you talk about some of the edges and also the veins that we're seeing in some of the irises?
Yeah, it's getting real exciting. We're getting a lot of new patterns and veining, edges, working on double edges. You see like dark edging here, and you might see light edging over there.
They almost look like paintings, you know, with the fine brush strokes.
There's actually one called oil painting back there.
So we're seeing some kind of maroon, dark colored, not quite red, but are we calling them red? Or?
We're getting
Okay.
redder and redder. You know,
Okay.
they're not like daylily red, but we're more a kind of a violet red or a brownish red. But yeah, we're getting some real pretty red ones.
So you're also a judge.
Yes.
On the national level. So is every breeder out there trying to chase the red and the black iris, or?
Well, it's, you know, you're doing a little of everything. But yeah, there's always, I'll make a few crosses on that one, I think, and see what comes up. But yeah, it's just working on a lot of different things.
So how long does it take also from when you're collecting those seeds till you get to see the actual flower, whether it's worth keeping or not?
Well, the seeds, you know, they form a pod. In about 2 months, I'll collect the seeds, and then I just store them inside. And around Thanksgiving time, we'll plant them in pots.
Okay.
And then they come up and we plant them in the ground next spring. And then 2 years, we'll see a bloom.
All right.
And that's when we'll start evaluating if it's whether to keep it or feed it to the bunnies.
And how hard is that? I mean, you've worked 2 years and you have to feed some of these to the bunnies.
Well, once you're going, it is hard sometimes, and some of them are so close, and you want to introduce it, but it needs to be distinctive.
All right. And you have some really creative names for those that you have released that are in your catalog. And if our viewers want to get a hold of this catalog, how can they do that?
Well, they can go to stoutgardens.com.
Okay.
You can order it online. It's $6, but it's full color and has every type we have. Or they can go online where there's even more varieties online.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Often when we think about great landscape plants, we think about Glossiobilia, viburnums, spireas, and even crepe myrtles. But one that I want to remind you of is the ninebark, or Physocarpus opulifolius. You might remember the cultivar Diablo being named the 2006 Oklahoma Proven Shrub of the Year. And it was chosen because not only are ninebarks great shrubs for Oklahoma, but Diablo specifically has nice burgundy maroon foliage and is contrasted by these white clusters of flowers that it gets in the springtime. Now you can see it's a pretty large shrub, getting about 6 to 10 feet tall, which makes it a nice background plant or a plant that you might use for screening purposes. Now if Diablo gets a little bit too large for your landscape, there are some other cultivars that you might consider trying. Amber Jubilee only gets about 5 to 6 feet tall with about a 4-foot spread. You'll notice that the foliage on it is a little bit different as well, as it starts out with kind of a orangey yellow new growth that then fades to green in the summertime and finally turns more of a purple color in the fall. There's also another cultivar called Summer Wine that again gets to be about 5 to 6 feet tall, and it's known to be a little bit more resistant to powdery mildew, which can sometimes be a problem with ninebarks. One feature that we really like about Summer Wine is the arching branches and the form that it creates in the landscape. Little Devil is another cultivar you might consider, only getting to be about 3 to 4 feet tall. And it looks similar to Diablo, but it looks like a miniature of Diablo. Even the foliage is much smaller, but it's still going to have that burgundy look to it. This actually might make a great substitution for barberry if you're looking to get rid of the thorns on that shrub. Little Devil adapts well to both wet and dry soil conditions and is also noted as being mildew resistant as well. Now, this plant is known as Physocarpus opulifolius, but the common name is ninebark, and it's known as ninebark because in the wintertime when you lose all of the foliage, you have several layers of exfoliating bark that provide some winter interest to carry you through those colder months. Ninebarks are great plants because not only do they adapt well to full sun and part shade, but several different soil conditions and are cold hardy to zones 2 to 3. It's spring here in Oklahoma, and hopefully we're done with all the cold weather. But there's one blizzard that we're always anticipating in the garden, and that's this pearl bush cultivar blizzard. It's also sold under the trademark of Snow Day. You can see it's aptly named pearl bush because of the small white buds that it creates all over the plant. Now, it kind of blooms into these white flowers that remind me a little bit of a rose. And in fact, it is in the same plant family, Rosaceae. This shrub gets to be about 5 to 6 feet tall and also wide. And we have it planted here on the west side of our shade garden because it prefers part sun, part shade. It likes a slightly acidic soil, so it might be something that you consider planting with your azaleas or rhododendrons, but it's pretty well adapted to other soils as well. This shrub is hardy from zones 4 to 8, so we know that it will be able to handle even the coldest Oklahoma winter. Now, as you might have guessed, because of the early spring flowers on it, this shrub does bloom on old wood, which means you don't want to prune it until after it's finished blooming. Once it is finished blooming, it graciously takes a back seat to the rest of the landscape with its just lovely green foliage. This is one blizzard that I hope you do get to experience in your garden. Today we're here at Southwood Landscape and Garden Center, and we're looking at ways to add focal points into the garden. Now, typically, this guy is our main focal point, but he's going to show us some other specimen plants. What do you have for us, Paul?
Well, okay, so the whole notion of specimen is meant to just jump out at you, to draw your eye. It's a focal point.
Right.
And every landscape deserves at least one. So they don't have to be dramatic, but typically they are. So I wanted to show you some of the more dramatic ones to start.
Okay.
And easily the most popular is the Weeping Atlas Cedar.
Yeah, look at this. It's beautiful.
They really are stunning. Some people call them Dr. Seuss trees. I like that, actually. But holy cow, they scream at you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you cannot miss a specimen like this.
Right, and each one of them are so unique. They look like art sculptures, really, I think.
They do. And if you can imagine, if you paired these two arches, you know, you could create
a tunnel.
Yeah. That's a really cool effect. So, and you know, the blue is nice.
Right.
Nice departure from green.
And it's a good tough plant for Oklahoma.
Oh yeah.
You know, I mean.
They love it here.
Yeah.
They love it here.
So what else do we have?
Well, in a smaller, more shrub-like form.
Going green now over here.
Going green, this is a Japanese white pine called Fukuzumi. And if you're a real conifer nut, you know that when you see this wooden box, it comes from Isley Nursery in Boring, Oregon. I've been there a couple times.
Right.
It's anything but boring, I assure you.
And they're well known for their conifers and their specimen plants. Yeah.
They are premier growers.
Yeah.
So something like that, you know, again, hello.
Yeah.
Look at me.
I love this. It looks like little, almost like it's been pruned, but it hasn't been at all.
And it's coning. I mean, it's just really, really spectacular. And behind it.
That tall one?
That is sometimes called an Alaskan cedar. It's not a cedar at all. It's a Chamaecyparis nootka-tensis.
Okay.
The upright forms, typically you've got Jubilee, Green Arrow. There are several different cultivars out there, but that makes a heck of a statement as well.
Yeah. And it kind of gives you that eerie look a little bit.
A little bit. They're well adapted here, good, well-drained soil. which is the case with most conifers. And watch its watering needs a little bit. Not too wet, not too dry. Just
right.
Just right. It's got that Goldilocks watering requirement. But I love those, and they're just upright. Doesn't take up that much room.
Well, it looks like you might have a few more on the other side. Let's go around there.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Paul, this one will definitely grab your eye in a garden.
Yeah, you know, if the weeping blue out of the cedar was the Dr. Seuss tree, this is Cousin It. For those old enough to remember the Addams Family show.
Right.
This is a Picea abies pendula. Actually a fairly common plant, but you just don't often see them grown to this height and spectacular.
They're beautiful.
Again, the wooden box, so you know it's a quality plant. And we've got 2 of these, so I've just often thought, you know, there's some large home where these could flank the entrance, or, you know, it's so dramatic.
Yeah, I just love how they look like a drapery or a cascade almost.
Yeah, and you'll get a little dieback as they grow in the interior. Just prune it out, it's no big deal.
That just makes it more unique, right?
Yeah.
All right, well, we got another cascading one over here behind us.
Yes.
And this one looks a little softer.
This is Pinus strobus. Angel Falls, this is called. So it's a white pine, and it's just stunning. I love this thing. Really dense growth, beautiful weeping form. I'll tell you something, it'll weep all the way to the ground, but then sometimes the needles will get all...
Kind of nasty.
Yeah, but if you plant this in such a way that you've got rocks,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
and you can let those lower branches cascade over the rock.
Right, and soften the rocks a little bit.
Really pretty.
Very nice.
Really pretty effect.
These are all beautiful.
They are.
And we've got one over here that is anything but cascading.
Yes.
I mean, it looks like it's been pruned this way.
This is a style of pruning called the Hindu pan. And this is another Japanese pine. But look at that. I mean, it's just gorgeous.
I love the bark on it too.
The bark is beautiful, little exfoliation almost. Now, with something like this, you do have to maintain, you got to pinch those candles routinely to maintain that, what they call the Hindu pan look. But goodness, we've had several of these and they fly out of here.
Yeah, and the candles, when you're talking about that, is the new growth that's coming out, and basically you pinch it to keep it, it's pruning it.
Exactly. So, now, I should mention, these aren't cheap. That's $1,500.
But that's a lot of growth you're getting for that. I mean, that's been growing for a long time. So
Bingo.
That's the cost, really, that you're paying for.
Yes, and not just grown, but manicured and tended to all along the way.
Very different than any of our other perennials or trees that just grow quickly. I mean, this has been taken care of for a long time.
Right.
So Paul, I mean, these are pricey specimens. What would a person do if they couldn't afford one of these, or maybe their garden's not suited for something this elaborate?
Well, I should make it clear, they don't have to be conifers, they don't have to be expensive. You could have a beautiful ornamental grass in a bed that is the focal point, that is the specimen in that bed.
Yeah.
It could be a nice crepe myrtle. It could be anything, a vitex, one of my favorites.
Right.
So it doesn't have to be a conifer, and it doesn't have to be expensive. But speaking of conifers, there is one I have to finish up with.
Uh-oh, okay.
Because it's like my new favorite plant.
All right.
Okay.
Is it this big?
No, that's the best part about it.
All right, let's go look.
All right, check this out, Casey.
What do you got?
All right, well, this is a dawn redwood.
It is?
It is.
Redwoods are giant, tall trees.
Well, and believe it or not, this one, at maturity, say 10 years, 8 feet tall.
Seriously.
So it has become my favorite plant for so many different reasons. First of all, a small metasequoia.
Right.
Gorgeous foliage. It's almost creamy colored, the new spring growth. And then it'll transition to more of that russet color before it is deciduous.
Right.
It's a deciduous
It's like
conifer,
bald cypress. I mean,
Exactly.
they're mistaken for each other a lot. But
but, for a small yard, a courtyard, a bed where you just need that specimen, to me, this is ideal. Now, we only got 5 of these, but and that means that one's already spoken for. I just can't say enough about this.
Well, there you go. You've shown us everything from conifers that are large and looming to something that's very petite.
Yeah. Gorgeous.
All make great focal points in your garden.
Yeah. It's specimen time.
The holidays are a time for gratitude, and we would like to express our gratitude to everyone who makes Oklahoma gardening possible. Our administration and colleagues in the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service, the Department of Horticulture and Landscape Architecture, and Agricultural Communication Services. We would also like to thank our sponsors for all of their support and collaboration throughout the season. And special thanks go to the employees, student workers, and the incredible group of garden ambassadors at the Botanic Garden at OSU who work behind the scenes to make our garden home a beautiful backdrop for our program. And finally, we are grateful for you, the viewers who join us each week for our gardening adventures. We wish you wellness and joy. Happy holidays. There are lots of great horticultural events this time of year. Be sure and consider these activities when you're making your plans for the weeks ahead. To find out more information about show topics, as well as recipes, videos, articles, fact sheets, and other resources, including a directory of local extension offices, be sure and visit our website, oklahomagardening.okstate.edu. And we always have great information, answers to questions, photos, and gardening discussions on your favorite social media as well. Join in on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find this entire show and other recent shows, as well as individual segments on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. And tune in to our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel to watch segments from previous hosts. Oklahoma Gardening is produced by the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University. The Botanic Garden at OSU is home to our studio gardens, and we encourage you to come visit this beautiful Stillwater jewel. We wish to thank our generous underwriters, Southwood Landscape and Garden Center, and the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry. Additional support is provided by Pond Pro Shops, Greenleaf Nursery and the Garden Debut Plants, and the Oklahoma Horticultural Society.